One of the reasons for optimism when you looked at the House of Representatives was Representative Henry Waxman, a Democrat from California, became the chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Also in that committee was Congressman Ed Markey, another longtime advocate for the environment. The challenge they faced was that while the party in power in Washington had changed, the influence of polluting special interests had not, and there are a lot of conservative Democrats in Congress, closely allied with big oil, dirty coal, etc., who were demanding that any climate or energy bill be watered down. In response, Congressman Waxman actually ended up basing his bill on a proposal written in part by polluting companies, including Shell Oil and Duke Energy.
The Waxman-Markey bill is based on a compromise package that was introduced in December of January of this year. And essentially, it's an agreement between environmental groups as well as corporations like Duke and Shell that they're trying to reach some sort of consensus to move climate legislation. The problem with that consensus is that it didn't reach the scientific targets that we need to achieve. It contained a lot of offsets or loopholes in your climate and your reductions in global warming gases, as well as it provided a lot of giveaways to some of the electric utilities who are actually the prime polluters that are emitting most of the global warming gases in the United States.
What we found was pretty disturbing. The bill gives billions, tens of billions, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars away to dirty, polluting industries. And they really don't deserve to get any more cash than they already are getting. They're already getting subsidized and have been for the last, I don't know, century or so. We really need to start investing in clean energy technologies instead of giving these polluting industries more money.
First and foremost, it's about the targets. The short-term targets in this bill are not strong enough.
The Waxman-Markey bill falls drastically short of what scientists say is necessary to save our planet from serious climate destabilization. We can do better than that, and we need to.
One of the problems with the carbon trading section of this bill is that it's subject to gaming by Wall Street traders. Wall Street has 130 full-time lobbyists roaming Capitol Hill working just on climate change legislation. And one of the results of that is they've been able to get a bill that's very favorable to them. And there's a real potential for harm to the broader economy.
Carbon trading as an idea is supposed to be very simple. That simply the government creates allowances or permits to pollute, which are given or auctioned away to companies that are carbon emitters. And that those companies that emit more than their regulated amount actually have to buy additional allowances or permits from those companies that may have emitted less.
Friends of the Earth, being a group that's really concerned about the macroeconomics of how society works, we're really concerned about giving Wall Street the tools to actually create a multi-trillion-dollar market. You know, we've already seen what Wall Street can do with mortgages, we've seen what Wall Street can do with global trade and global financing, and yet this bill gives Wall Street the keys to protecting our climate. Somehow, you know, we find that not only wrong, but we find that morally repugnant.
Carbon trading will create a massive, massive new financial market. And what we've really seen in this current financial crisis is that the ability of Washington to regulate Wall Street is really pretty bad. And it would be pretty imprudent, actually, to create a very, very large and complex carbon market and foist it upon a new and untested financial regulatory regime.
Maybe the biggest problem with this bill is not actually something new it creates, but it's something it takes away. In 2007, in its Mass v. EPA ruling, the Supreme Court held that the Environmental Protection Agency has the authority to regulate global warming pollution. And what the Waxman-Markey bill would actually do is take away that authority. So in that sense, the EPA already has a tool to tackle global warming, and this bill takes that tool out of the toolbox, and that's a problem.
Colin Peterson basically acted like a stubborn 5-year-old who really wanted a cookie before he, ate his dinner. He essentially threatened to hold the entire climate bill hostage in order to get his way with this big biofuels situation. He did not want to have these greenhouse gas emission standards on biofuels. So what he did was basically said he would prevent anyone else on his committee, the Agriculture Committee, about 40 Democrats or so, from voting on this bill unless he got his way and these greenhouse gas standards were removed. This is particularly bad considering the fact that the global warming pollution standards on the biofuels policy were the first ever to be enacted by Congress to actually reduce any sort of global warming pollution specifically.
What offsets allow companies to do is, instead of reducing their emissions here in the US, paying other countries, for example, to reduce their emissions on their behalf. So basically what it does is that it allows polluting entities here to get out of their pollution reduction commitments and continue emitting. The biggest problem is that because the bill allows so many offsets to be used for compliance, if all of those offsets are in fact used, we won't see any emissions reductions happening in the US until 2026.
Will this help us at the international level?
No, not really. So in December of this year, there's going to be a very big United Nations conference on climate in Copenhagen. And everybody talks about the road to Copenhagen and how we need the Waxman-Markey bill to get us there. But it doesn't. I was just at a climate conference of the United Nations in Germany where I was constantly hearing over and over again in the halls how disappointed the world is with what the Obama administration is offering and with what the Waxman-Markey bill offers, both in terms of the global warming reductions that are going to come out of the bill and also in terms of the financing for developing countries to address global warming. This is not something that we can actually bring to Copenhagen to help us secure a good agreement to address climate.
This is our 40th year at Friends of the Earth, and in celebration of our anniversary, we can say we are true to our founding principles. We speak truth to power, and we say when you need legislation that science calls for and that legislation falls short of it, that is not acceptable.
Next, the bill is going to move to the Senate, and it's really important there that we identify and bolster a block of progressive senators who can stand up and not only oppose further weakening of this bill, but actually say, look, we've got a climate crisis on our hands. This is one of the most serious issues our country has ever faced, and we need to be much stronger in approaching how we're going to solve it. Fine senators are actually going to demand a better bill. That's what we're going to be working toward, and we hope you'll join us.